Akinari Kamiki, sometimes referred to as the Dying Young Man, is a frail, sickly-looking teenager who can be found every Sunday resting on a bench at Naganaki Shrine. Upon becoming acquainted with him, Makoto learns that Akinari actually suffers from a very rare, incurable genetic disease, and that it's not unlikely that he could die any day now. And although he seems to find solace in talking to and spending time with others, at the end of their first visit, he explicitly tells Makoto not to come back, as not to waste the precious time he's been given on someone who's just going to die. Of course, Makoto doesn't listen to him and decides to continue seeing him anyway. And after spending several afternoons together, Akinari begins to find himself fascinated with Makoto. He goes so far out of his way on his only off day to see him, but Akinari detects not even an ounce of pity from him. It sorta seems that, for the very first time, someone is going out of their way for Akinari, not out of a sense of obligation or as an act of charity, but simply out of a genuine desire to pursue friendship with him. Over the next couple of visits, Akinari reveals to Makoto that he likes to spend most of his time reading books, partially for enjoyment, but largely as a means of escape. And also that, despite all of the excitement they provide for him and how lost in them he may become, he can never bring himself to finish any of them, as closing the book for good would mean having no other choice but to pick up right where he left off in real life, as Akinari, the boy who can't escape from his fate. However, he's made peace with the fact that he may never finish them. After all, the way that he sees it, he has no real obligation to, because, technically, those stories weren't written for him. When each of those authors wrote those stories, they did so first and foremost for themselves. And that exact thought process is what eventually pushes Akinari to begin writing a story of his very own. During their next visit, he tells Makoto a little bit about his story idea. It's a fable about a pink alligator born in a forest of green. Being pink, he stands out, which makes it very hard for him to catch prey, leaving him very hungry all the time. The other animals in the forest look down on him due to his coloration, as they find it disgusting, rendering him an outcast. But one day, he made friends with a fellow freak, a bird that was unable to fly. And the alligator would let the little bird stand on his back to practice his flying. The alligator was overjoyed with his new friend, and every day they'd go to the river together, and the little bird would sing while the alligator listened. However, being unable to catch prey easily, the alligator was always so hungry that he'd often become dizzy. And one day, whilst in a starved trance, he accidentally ate the little bird while it slept in his mouth. Panicked, he did everything he could to try and cough his friend back up, but tragically, he was already dead. And that's as far as he's written. A horribly tragic tale it is, but Akinari knows that it can't end like this. Not yet, at least. There's still a conclusion that must be written, a resolution that must be found. And to figure out how he'll write it, he feels that he must first find meaning in his own life. That is Akinari's final task. During their next visit, Akinari announces that he's officially been released from the hospital. Not because his condition improved, of course, but simply because there's nothing that they can really do for him anymore. He's going to die very soon, whether he's under their care or not, so he thought he might as well spend his last days in the comfort of home. And after all of the anger, despair, and frustration he previously felt surrounding his fate, Akinari has ultimately made peace with his situation. No longer does he find himself aimlessly searching for a grand reason as to why he was dealt such a poor hand in life, if there even is a reason at all. Maybe this is just the way that things are, and for the first time in his life, Akinari is okay with that. However, he's not ready to go just yet. There's still one more thing he needs to do. One last thing he has to finish. And by their next visit, he's done it. His story has been completed. After accidentally eating his friend, the alligator cried and cried until he drowned in his own tears. However, those tears eventually transformed into a beautiful lake, around which grew beautiful flowers and a tree with delicious fruit. And with that, the alligator's place of death became a spot for all of the other animals in the forest to come and simply enjoy their lives, none of whom had any idea that the alligator had created it or that he was ever even gone. The end. It's not necessarily a fairy tale ending, but it's rather bittersweet in its message. The alligator led an unfortunate yet hopeful life that was tragically cut short before he could find any meaning in it. But it was through this tragedy and the creation of the beautiful lake that the other animals in the forest were able to find meaning in theirs. And that message is the conclusion that Akinari himself has come to. In the end, it doesn't really matter to him if he can't find any grand meaning in his short, tragic life. What's really important to him is how he was able to impact others and what he was able to do for them. And for his friend Makoto, he wrote a story. This is such an incredibly well-written and presented social link, and it's without a doubt my favorite one in the entire game. If Bunkichi and Mitsuko's link could be called the yin of the theme of death, then Akinari's is absolutely the yang, with the former being from the point of view of those who have lost someone dear to them, while the latter is completely from the perspective of the one who's being lost. In the beginning, Akinari would often find himself asking one simple question. Why? Why me? What did I do to deserve this? But of course, he knew that there simply wasn't an answer. However, after meeting Makoto, for the very first time in his life, Akinari felt the joy of true friendship, and subsequently, the question had changed. Instead of asking himself, why am I going to die? He began wondering, why am I alive? And in an attempt to find the answer, he began writing a story that shared many parallels with the struggles of his own life. And by the time this story was finished, his answer had been found. For Akinari, the true meaning of his life was to do everything he could in his short time to create a lasting impact on those who will outlive him. In other words, all Akinari had to do to finally make peace with the inevitability that awaited him was to build his legacy. And that legacy was the beautiful lake that he left behind in the form of a storybook.